Thank you everyone for coming to this meeting of the Capital Planning Subcommittee. Go around and introduce ourselves. My name is Sarah Williams. I'm Blackstone representative of the school committee.
Matt Aaronworth, I am the assistant superintendent.
Jason DeFalco, superintendent.
Carrie Gaudette, Blackstone School Committee representative.
Greg Smalley with DRA Architects.
Tara Larkin, Millville rep.
Right. And first on the agenda is review and approval of the minutes from May 17th. Did everyone have a chance to look those over?
I did. I'm just pulling them up
quorum,
as well.
right? To vote?
We do have a quorum of the committee.
Yeah, okay. Motion by Mary.
Second.
Second. Carrie? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right.
I know that the first thing on the agenda is a little update on our small facilities working group. It's a shame Matt is running 5 minutes late, but I will start to stay in the interest of time. So Matt and I have actually communicated a bunch, and we've had a number of meetings already. We actually set up individual meetings with each one of the head custodians where we did a Zoom call meeting. And we discussed the plan, the facilities report that we received. Each one of the head custodians have already reviewed it, but we set aside specific time to talk to each of the custodians about if there were any things that they were identifying that we might need to change, that may have been repaired or changed since the report was generated. And then we also talked about things that were still existing that were, so to speak, the low-hanging fruit that we were talking about. And I know that to date, we already started addressing things. We had someone come out and inspect the railings at the back of the complex. We have engineers scheduled to visit the playgrounds to assess the ADA compliance and the safety of them in general. We have engineers as well coming out to assess the railings at MES and the complex, not the complex, the high school, apologies, so that we can get an idea of potential fixes to make sure that they are up to code so that they are safe. And we also, oh great, perfect timing. We also had a meeting with an energy consultant that we are familiar with, and we discussed having some larger energy audits, general energy audits in each of the buildings. We've started that process, and in particular, we're looking at the potential for transitioning to LED lighting in all of the buildings, and also addressing some of the control issues that we have, and with some of the HVAC systems. Welcome, Matt. I knew that you were coming a few minutes late, so I was just giving a brief update, and I'll turn it over to you in a minute. I'll tell you what I mentioned. I mentioned our meetings with the custodians, discussing the facilities report, identifying any issues that they may have seen in it, anything that has recently been updated or changed since the report was published. Then we talked about the low-hanging fruit. I gave an example of the railings that we have scheduled to be fixed at the back of the complex. Then the engineers that are going to be visiting the playgrounds to assess safety and ADA compliance. Then the engineers that will be visiting the MES and the high school to check the railings to see what solutions we could potentially come up with in the short term. And then I mentioned I think you walked in as we were with the energy consultant discussing the energy audits and also the potential for LED lighting, HVAC controls. And quite honestly, we threw in a couple of other little things that might be of interest. We were very tentatively exploring possible electric vehicle powering stations. There's tremendous incentives to do that, and they're very inexpensive. So the state basically picks up 80% of the cost of installing a few of them. We're thinking that might be really cool at the high school or at the middle school, right in the front here for parents too, just showing that we're encouraging and supporting going in the green direction. And we also are going to have them look into, which probably has been explored at some point, the solar panels, both on the roofs of the buildings and the potential for carports. So we're trying to get a bunch of different wheels spinning and look at what the options are.
Saying, and then on this building, we talked about doing more of a full bore assessment of anything in this building that could be found that would be incentivized and could be run through Green Communities money or National Grid money, where we could, try to get a lot of the improvements done that way as well. Equipment upgrades, kitchen upgrades, things of that nature.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. And we invited Maureen, our food service director, into the meeting as well to discuss the possibilities of some of the equipment that she may need upgraded, and they're gonna include that in their assessment. To Matt's point, we did say this building, per our conversations at the last meetings, we said, like, this building, anything you can think of and or find that we can do to improve it, let's entertain. Versus at the high school right now, just check out the lighting and check out some of the low-hanging fruit, which is not like really going into depth with respect to the mechanical, the electrical systems that are there. Because again, we don't know what decisions this group will come to. Similarly, for the complex, we discussed the same thing. We said MES, definitely look at the controls and the HVAC and the lighting, because it seemed that in all of our conversations, there was no discussion of like, wow, MES is, off the table, or has significant issues that we wouldn't be able to overcome. So we were really trying to focus on the middle school and MES, like, there's no major issues, so let's try to do anything we can identify. Versus the high school and the complex, we backed off and said, let's look specifically at some of these things that are more short-term gains, as opposed to like investing significant amounts of money to get long-term gains.
Right, we know the assessed values of these buildings. I don't think they'll reach that threshold, but.
I had them when we did the report. I don't think we put them in the report. They're not all that high, from what I recall.
So I don't have them on hand, but I know that from an insurance perspective, I have new assessments on the buildings. I can get that information.
What sometimes municipalities don't reassess public buildings. What happens is you go to renovate, you change something very small, or you bring the whole building up to code.
Right, but we can make the argument of going to replacement cost
Yes.
under the building code. You just need to, take what you have here and work against MSBA's, and you can establish a replacement cost value, which the building code also recognizes.
So, I don't know if you want, for those of you that don't know, once you reach a third of the cost of the assessment of the building, you have to bring it up to code.
Okay.
So if it's real low, that's not gonna help anybody.
You reach it pretty quickly.
Yeah, we don't pay taxes, so it should be assessed at the right value.
I'm just making a note to myself and our insurance company to get those rates. I have them back in the office, but want to double check too, because our insurance company was actually in the process of incrementally raising our assessment values, because they didn't want to, there was like some new standards put in with respect to the insurance companies, and they didn't want to just say, here's your new assessment, so now your insurance rates go up astronomically. So I think it was more of a phased-in approach. They're increasing the assessment values incrementally. So I'll bring them to the next meeting.
Matt, when you have those, why don't you wing them over to me? I can work with the MSBA data and real quickly get you a projected replacement value.
Okay.
Which may also help your discussion with the insurance company.
Greg, did you say I'm trying to make sure my notes are accurate. Did you say that the building code also recognizes the MSBA replacement value?
Well, they don't,
How did
they
you
don't
frame
call it MSBA, they call it the replacement value of the building.
The replacement value, okay.
And MSBA's guidelines, they are data hawks. They bring in all kinds of data, and they have a pretty good basis of cost basis of what it would cost to replace a building.
Okay. So so you say that is in alignment with the MSBA
Yes.
guidelines? Okay. Just want to make sure I get that right for my own notes.
And that concludes our update on the working group. Unless there's something else that I might have missed.
I don't think so. I think that's everything. Did you get the updated information from the custodians?
I'm in the process of getting that. I did receive some of it. I have to follow up and get all of that. And I did forward some of that to you already, Greg. But we'll keep plugging away at that. So I believe the next piece on our agenda, really just to jump right into things, and I think Greg is here to help facilitate this process. We discussed at the last meeting that we would try to make this a brainstorming session. The conversation came up that when we look to MSBA, they're going to want to see the options that we were entertaining or that we at least thought of, and then, identify some of the pros and the cons. And while we may not be able to identify all of the pros and the cons at this meeting, I thought we would be able to brainstorm some ideas, and then if there's specific information that we need to get around the ideas, then we could follow up with that. And as I'm saying that, I am realizing that I did not bring the enrollment retention information. I'll have to circle back on that. Greg, how would you like to continue with gathering our thoughts? I know we brought some chart paper and some markers. I know thought there was air conditioning, but maybe it's just me, but it's suddenly feeling more.
If that door's left open, it's not gonna stay cool.
Okay.
I made sure it was fine.
Okay.
Well, we can do this a number of ways. Don't really have enough people to break up into groups, but there's, in a broad sense of it, there's probably 5 areas that we can explore that will help us start to develop a picture of what the district might be as we go forward. And I'll put them out very broadly, and we can fill in pieces. And if you've got a 6th, throw it out there. And these are in no particular order, and you'll find that they work off of one another. But the first one is the towns as a whole. So, and you have to think not just about your 2 towns, but also the towns around you. So we're talking about demographics. What's happening in the towns, the growth or lack of growth, the demographics of that, age groups. What do you know is happening in the area? The build out of senior housing, of Section 8 housing. What is the makeup of the communities in terms of ethnicity, the free and reduced lunch programs, how busy are they, how are they growing, and what do we know is happening with enrollment? So those are general big picture items of, here's what I think is happening. And you don't need to be 100% factual on any of this in a working group. This is your knowledge and opinion kind of grouped together, because that's ultimately what happens when you get to the community. It's everybody's opinion, and we need to be able to say, okay, I anticipated that, and here's what I can tell you as what's happening. So that first one is demographics. The second one that I have here, and once again, they're not in any real order, is grade configurations across the district. And in here, it's kind of what is possible to just blue sky the thing. What might you do? And then from each one of those, what are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? So you're all looking at it from your own perspective. And if I say, well, what I'd really think would be handy is an early childhood program. So a pre-K to grade 1, pre-K to grade 2. So my disadvantage might be, what building do I put it in? And now am I transporting a whole bunch of young kids around the town to get them to that building? Another question might be, what's it do for my teacher licensing and certifications? Does that make it more difficult for me to get teachers in here to work? The advantages are maybe a non-grade structured environment for ages 3 through 7 has some advantages in terms of being able to teach across capability regardless of age. So we're trying, that's really going over to Jason and Matt's side of the table, but it's the kind of thing that you want to keep pushing on to various things. And in each one of these, there's always that last question of how acceptable to the community do you think this is? So it could be a great idea from an educational point of view and go nowhere with the community. And so if that's what we think, it doesn't mean that we don't try. It means that we start thinking about how to convey this idea. Third one we've talked about quite a bit since we started this is what are the educational and curricular offerings, both in district and out of district. So where are kids going and why? What happens with outplacement? Are you placing a number of students out into programs that don't currently exist? Who's leaving by need, which is kind of redundant, and who's leaving by desire, which is also is anyone opting in? And if not, is there a program that would help them do it?
I don't know if you want us to wait till the end or.
No, just
Okay.
jump in here.
So I'd like you to address this question that I get asked, whether it's you over and over again. Why aren't we putting trades and shop class back in the school? Is it the MSBA calls that Chapter 74 and has to go to vocational school? I know you're working with WPI. I know you have force ready programs you're working with. So I think we're on video. Let's address this question.
I can tell you first that you can have career path, you can have Chapter 74 programs in a general curriculum high school. David Prouty High School, not too far from you guys, has just that. And they've got 3 Chapter 74 programs. They're looking to expand to a 4th within a general curriculum 2-town regional district. So very similar to you guys. There's nothing that says you can't do it as far as MSBA or the State Department of Education. It's a matter of what programs help you.
Does funding come into play with it? Do they not fund?
I'm not entirely sure on the funding for the program. I believe it does come with it when you offer it, especially at the regional level. We can certainly get you an answer on that one.
Yeah, and as far as what we are doing, just so, again, whoever tunes in and checks this out. So we actually started this work kind of twofold. We started at the high school and the middle school. So at the middle school, we wrote a grant. We're ending our first year with it. We were awarded a $100,000 grant to study career exploration, particularly in the areas of technology, artificial intelligence, coding, robotics. So we actually have all of those programs running right here at the middle school, in addition to a true career exploration course that the kids take to really kind of assess level of interest and what direction they want to go in. So we're finishing year 1 in that work. As a matter of fact, the makerspace that they use is just on the other side of our library here. Then at the high school, we have quite a bit happening. So we're ending our first year of Project Lead the Way or biomedical pathway. Next year, we're starting our first year of engineering and manufacturing. So we'll have a new engineering manufacturing program. We also have a robotics program. And we're in year 2, which we're really excited about, and we'll be expanding next year. Essentially a career development, we're calling it Blackstone Valley Excel, where all of the high schools in the region have worked together And we are offering courses to each other on weekends and after school. So for instance, we've already run a cybersecurity course that we participated in Hopedale. We had a virtual welding program that we participated in through the Ed Hub at the Chamber of Commerce. And we've done manufacturing 1 and 2. Through Uxbridge. Our school will be offering an audiovisual program that will be running through Mr. Gaudet the second semester of next year. So we're really excited about the opportunity for all of that expansion so that now our kids actually don't need to leave to take those courses. They can stay right here and they can enroll in a welding program through the Ed Hub. They can stay here and they can enroll in a cybersecurity program at Hopedale High School. The other benefit to that, there's no cost to the students. All this is grant funded. Myself and a few of our superintendent colleagues wrote a fairly significant grant, so we're waiting to hear some final words on that. But to date, we've been able to fund all of it through our district, so no cost to the student, which has been great. And it allows for an accelerated credit opportunity for kids. So they actually can take extra credits. So these courses are all credit-bearing courses. So you can have students that can earn a couple of additional credits in any given school year. So we're really, really moving in a great direction with that, not only with our homegrown programs, but also with the BV Excel, Blackstone Valley Excel program.
That's very positive.
Yeah. Once everything, once you add up all of the grants that we have brought in for this work, it's over $1 million in funding that we've just written for, frankly. So we're really excited about the opportunities for the students. So those that are saying like, they're not doing anything to keep kids or do that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, no, that's why I wanted to get that out there.
Yeah.
People that don't have students like myself in the school anymore
Oh, sure.
aren't aware of those programs unless they come to these meetings or pay attention. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's helpful to hear, Mary.
You know, as you're discussing that, I'm just thinking, again, I know not to jump ahead, but with respect to the brainstorming aspect,
Sure.
you know, we have program offerings at BMR, there's some program offerings at Uxbridge, there's courses in different places, and I wonder about our availability of space as we're reconfiguring. If we were to turn one of our spaces into one of these, a real Ed Hub center for the region, in essence, almost like a collaborative, like we do with special needs programs.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mention that because we're having a problem on the other end with the students. There's not enough room in their schedules for all of the additional courses that we actually offer, and I'm sure people don't know that either. I mean, and that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
We have, students have so many courses they want to, first of all, so many they have to take, right? And then so many they want to take on top of the ones they're already committed to, like, band or the arts and that kind of thing. And they run out of the 7-period day.
Well, I think
They run out of places to,
Yeah, that's great to hear because I think a few years ago we were hearing that they were having more studies because we didn't have enough electives.
Yeah. We still have some of those, of course. And there are some students that opt for that,
Right.
frankly. But I know it's been a goal of the school committee and of us to eliminate those or reduce them as much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, or this upcoming school year, we have an additional English, math, and science teacher through our ESSER money that we're bringing on that is going to be doing quite a bit of intervention and support work to help, kind of narrow the gaps that COVID created, but also looking at offering different enrichment courses for kids. So it's really, it's a really exciting time because we're going to get both bites of that apple too. But when you think about space, how do we create the structure to support that? That's one of the questions we've been having in our Blackstone Valley Superintendent Consortium is just that. All of our high schools are around the same size, between 4 and 550-ish, give or take. And it's super hard to be all things to all kids when you're trying to build pathways and programs for 400 students. There's just not a lot of students, believe it or not, like in the grand scheme of things. So that was the whole concept that we started 3 years ago of like, well, how do we actually do this regionally? Instead of 13 communities all having the same programs and fighting for the same students, why can't we just open them up and allow for a free-flowing opportunity for students that in a jam-packed schedule already can't find space for that cybersecurity class. Well, you don't have to. It's Tuesday nights, 2 hours a week and 2 Saturdays a semester. And it's a blended learning model, which the kids love. So we've been is creative, in thinking about that and with the space too. Greg on how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, do you know of any, or even Jason, this may just be my lack of knowing, are there any districts in this state or others that have like a collaborative center that's not a Voc school that is drawing
Like a
kids
career collaborative?
out, but a career collaborative as opposed to a special education collaborative?
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to look at that one, Matt. The closest one I can come up with was the example I gave you, the Katy Independent School District in Texas, but that's kind of district-wide, but that district's probably the size of the Blackstone Valley, given Texas.
Yeah.
And that's a physical space for people, like a class to go to for a set period of time. So instead of going to the regular school, they'd go there, even if it's for half a day. So that's a thought on a regional level that would require transportation and whatnot, and who owns it and how's it owned. But it is similar to what the Blackstone Valley lab that is doing a STEAM for the
Ed Hub?
communities as a whole.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a similar outside of the school district type of setup that is quite successful. But I'll do some research on see if we can find some districts that are doing a collaborative space.
There may not be.
I think that's a great question, because I think what we've done is, how do we run our in-district programming? How do we run our Blackstone Valley Superintendent Consortium programming? And then how do we partner with the Ed Hub? Because there are certain things at the Ed Hub, like we have a wait list of 12 or 13 students that want to take that virtual welding course. There's
great.
a lot of interest. Like that's
great.
a big, and the kids that are taking it are loving it.
Right.
Similarly with the cybersecurity, we had students that changed their major for next year in college based on that course, and they just took it this semester.
Wow.
So the interest is there, and the kids are really enjoying it when they get into it. But to your question, Matt, and the 13 high schools, or if you take Milford's a bit bigger, so you kind of take Milford out of that. We can't all put a manufacturing lab in our building. You just can't. That's why we partnered with Uxbridge. They have that. They have the equipment, and they were awesome. Their teacher was amazing, and the kids absolutely loved working with them. So that was why we kind of created that partnership.
What about exploring other trades? So, not every kid wants to go to college, right? So you have a wait list for a welding program.
Yep.
That's a good hard blue collar trade. What about looking at other options for kids?
Yeah. So one of the things the guidance staff did, and I don't think it was this. Was it this fall or last fall? I apologize for not recalling which. It was either fall of 20 or 19. I don't remember. But they had surveyed the students to gather career interests, because as we were putting our toe in this water, we wanted to make sure we were offering stuff that the kids would take. So I can't remember if we just did it to do the next round of courses or we had done it the year before, but they had come up with a list of interests that the students had that they were really curious about, like career-wise.
But what about doing a generalized program? So you call it a career exploration.
Yep.
So it's what's a semester? 3 months? 2 months? You've got 8 weeks where every week you're gonna learn a little bit about something else that's out there for a career path, to see other opportunities that are there. If you're with a consortium of other schools, there's got to be other instructors and people in the community you could lean on to set something like that, where a kid can learn what it's like to be a roofer, to be a plumber, to all of these other opportunities that are out there that, frankly, in most schools are looked down upon. You don't want to be blue collar. You want to go to college. If you don't go to college, you're not going to get a good job. Most trade guys make more than most kids walking fresh out of college.
Sure. Yeah, and
Says probably the blue collar guy sitting at the table.
And our focus, just so our purpose for our work is college, career, and community. So we're looking at all three. I think we've cornered, and I think we can always do better, but the college piece, about 80% of our kids go on to a 2 or 4 year school. But we still have 20%, of our graduating class that usually doesn't. They're looking at something a little bit different. And so what we have moved to, and we started this work a couple of years ago, is your diploma and. So we want to make sure that when students graduate, they have the diploma, and even if it's just some exposure to a couple of different career options. We've done work in training around even CNAs, home health aides. So we've tried a lot of different opportunities that the kids have asked us about once we, surveyed and gotten some feedback. But no, it's a good point. Very good point.
I mean, to open up a million other avenues to kids and let these kids see what's out there in the real world. Because for the kids who don't, and I've interviewed kids who graduated from BMR in the last year or two who have no clue what they want to do for their life, and they're just trying to find a job, and then they get sucked into every one of these. I don't want to down talk New England Tech, but I'm going to use them as an example because I can't think of the other one off the top of my head. But like the NETS, New England Tractor Trailer School, has like 8 different trades that they offer now, and you pay $10,000 for a 6-month course.
Yeah, those certification programs.
Yeah, and they're just going to fill your head with a bunch of nonsense that doesn't really translate into the real world. And these kids are spending money on all these courses, not knowing where they want to go with life, and they end up taking 3 or 4 certification programs and sinking themselves into debt because they never got that footing earlier in, which is what used to be nice about school, is you got to play some home ec and woodworking and all those other things to see what you liked.
I think a piece of that, though, is community involvement. Like getting businesses that my husband runs an underground utilities company. He's got guys who put gas pipeline in. They graduated from high school and they're doing really well for themselves. So if you could almost partnership some of those programs with a business, like an HVAC company.
And I guarantee you could, where you could, even if it was just like an exploration program. So like the tech schools do job shadowing days.
Yep.
You get to go out for a day and work at an underground utilities company, HVAC company, a plumbing company, a carpentry company, where these kids are just there. They're just job shadowing. They're there to watch. They're not really going to do anything. Everyone lets them, play with tools a little bit so they get a chance to see what it's really like. But things like that, if you open things like that up to your students, that may help that 20% who doesn't want to go to college or can't afford to go to college, because there's still a piece of that around here. Find a better path as opposed to flipping burgers.
Agreed.
Mary?
So you've been really great and innovative in finding these programs and that. But while we're discussing other trades, they announced yesterday, Camilla Harris I don't know if you saw it, that one of the ARPA funds is geared towards broadband, to bring broadband to the rural areas and the people that, with all the homeschooling, haven't had access. But that grant money also includes training for techs and linemen. And, National Grid has their training center on Route 20. Perhaps we could have class here and train there, or similar thing, just a thought.
So one of the things that is really great about this conversation is it's very timely, because part of the grant that we wrote has a career exploration internship coordinator. That's what they do. So they actually work with our high school students and they actually place them in internships. We do that in the high school as well, but part of the problem, from my perspective, is we do it too late, way too late. Second semester or last quarter of your senior year is the worst time to do that, because kids have already made decisions on career paths or like those certificate programs, exactly what you're talking about. I've heard that too. Kids have spent tons of money and time taking a 6-month program, then they go to another one, and before you know it, they've paid a year of college tuition. They have 3 certifications, they don't want to do any of them.
And they're not worth anything in the real world.
Yep. And so we've found that the internship thing is nice and it's a good opportunity, but it's too late. Not all the students qualify for it. And then by the time, they've already made some big decisions, they realize, I actually don't like nursing now that I interned in it last quarter, that kind of thing. So part of what we're going to be looking to do through one of the grants that we wrote through ASA, which is the American Assistance Group, they fund our middle school career exploration work, is that we will have a person that is just charged with actually coordinating these career opportunities, the career exploration side of it, and then the internships. But we need to start that sooner, way sooner. The challenge we have that we have to figure out, and we will, is again the scheduling issue. Because the kids have so many maths, English, science, histories, phys ed courses that they have to take to graduate with their diploma, plus passing MCAS, and if they need any intervention and support for that, it's literally just figuring out where do you put it in. That's all.
And that last quarter is a lot shorter too.
It is.
For the seniors. So
it's way too late.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so at the trade schools, they start at sophomore year.
Yep.
So it was sophomore year I was able to start job shadowing and seeing what it was really like in the real world, so I could make sure I was in a trade that I was okay with.
That makes sense. The part that I can't figure out how to work through, in a vocational technical high school, you get 90 days of instruction of core So I don't know how they get through their algebra program in 90 days. I'm not sure how they do that, but
Lots of homework.
yeah. So it's like trying to figure out how do you balance that, because the students still have to have their full maths and science, unless you go to a kind of a block scheduling like we did this year, and there's tons of pros and tons of cons to that. That actually gave the kids an opportunity for another course. They actually could take 8 this year, which is really great. But then you're looking at, 4 90-minute classes a day, and some kids burn out after 40 minutes, and it's, of math, that kind of thing.
But block scheduling was how we handled a lot of our English, math, science courses at the tech school.
Right. So you could do your labs. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So because it was 2 weeks of academics, then 2 weeks of shop. So you had 2 weeks to forget everything you learned, and then you had to go back and crunch in and get it all back down to be able to.
Yeah.
I mean, you laugh, but it's the truth.
No, I know.
And that's where if block scheduling allows you to add an 8th course, maybe that eighth course becomes, a career exploration class, even if it's just for a sophomore year or for junior year, and whatever time it fits in best with schedules, where these kids can start to see something different.
That was a nice benefit, as it does allow for that. But it brings other challenges like AP courses, the kids that are taking that, band kids that are taking that. So there just are other challenges with it. But
That job shadowing piece that you were talking about too is so interesting, especially as we're exploring the options with having a coordinator for the internships. Like you were saying, maybe they're not just necessarily traditional internships.
It was literally a day.
It's working with, like you said, working with a local roofer, or shadowing.
Did the welding course. Go out and shadow a welder for a day and see what it's actually like.
Yeah.
Go to CNC machine shop. There are enough local businesses around here that if you went to them and said, hey, we want to help you, because especially in the trade world, there is a gigantic shortage of help. I'd hire 6 guys tomorrow if I could find them that were qualified. So if you go to some of those companies and start pushing that, listen, it's a job shadowing program. Most of them are going to be willing to work with you and say, yeah, you know what? It'd be great. Let's get some of these kids interested in things earlier in life where
it's a pipeline for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe the kid works out and, hey, you like this? Come try it out for a summer. Come have a summer job,
What helps with that, and if you could fill that position you're talking about, is to go to the job, go to the potential placement with a syllabus or an outline of what would be, how you can help that business.
Yep.
Because a lot of people are willing to do it, but the first thing they say is, I don't know what to do with this kid when he gets here. So if you come in and say, okay, fine, here's what we'd like you to do. Here's how we'll do it. Here's how our insurance protects you from anything that may happen. And here's the person that you can call if you get stuck with something. So it's as much as identifying what the potential is, as to go there and saying, we really just need you to open up this possibility for this student to see what this world's like. And certainly there's enough skilled trades that don't require a college degree but require a better level of understanding and education to really excel at. And there's also enough in the professional world that we're approached all the time as an architectural firm of, could you help us with job shadowing and whatnot? And it's always a tripping for us is, what do you do with the kid when you get here? What do they need in order to make it valuable? Because it's too easy for me to say, fine, do you know how to run a computer? Sit there and do that. And that's not helping anybody. It's not creating a future architect or engineer either.
So Greg, can I ask you a question? This is a great, really important conversation, and thinking about the space for all of this, like the physical space, right? Because we have to make sure we have the actual infrastructure and the actual space itself designed to do that. One of the things that I've been trying to figure out, and have really been thinking about for 3 years, is how do you be all things to all students when you're running a comprehensive high school, right? So I say that specific title because that has very, it has a definition behind it, right? And so again, so do the math. We're talking 80% of the kids are going on to 2 or 4 year programs. We have an excellent college completion rate. So I know that we're doing the prep work for that well. Again, we could always do it better. So then you're looking at, say 25% of students that are interested in the career, right, path. So you're talking about maybe like 100 students. Well, to run a really, one pathway, one solid pathway, you need at least 100 kids, you know, kind of 25 to 30 at each level as you keep moving forward through your different courses that you hope will eventually lead to a certification or something, right? If it's advanced manufacturing or something like that. How do you do that when, if you have, right, outside of the work, like the ideas that we've been brainstorming, but how do you create that space and how do you create those options for 4 or 5 different, or maybe 2 or 3 different, when you have 100 total students that would want to take that all the way through, right? To kind of what you were saying, like, what do you, like, how do we?
5 kids in each grade level in
But
each
what
pathway.
That's the challenge. That like we're like, how
But
do you?
what's to say that the 80% who go to the 2 or 4 year schools wouldn't jump into those programs as well because they want to explore something different?
They might.
They
but
go to school because
they
it's
might.
been, it's been browbeat into their head since they were a little kid that they should go to college to get a good job because that's what mommy and daddy told them the whole way, or that's what their teacher said, or this person or that person. Everyone says college, college, college. So they just say, I have to go to college. How many of that 80% walks through that pathway as well? We end up with now 150 or 200 students walking that path as opposed to just 100 who aren't going to go to a 2 or 4 year school.
Yeah.
Not to say those kids aren't still going to go to the 2 or 4 year school, but
Sure.
they may jump into that class because it's a better elective for them than Spanish 3 or, you know, music or whatever the other course they would have taken.
Yeah, I think if I understand Jason's question right, he's asking the same question you're asking of why don't we do that? And I think probably the best way to start to get an understanding on it is almost a Venn diagram. What's at the core of the Chapter 74 offering that might be interesting to a kid who eventually goes to college? And what's at the core of that 74 offering that may overlap with another one? So, so like, and I'll use David Prouty again, not that I understand all their programming, but they did, let's call it legal reporting, early childhood, and I'm going to forget the third one. And their overlap was the technology that's at the center of it. And so they took those programs, and I'll go back and get their programs so we can have a better, more informed discussion. But they took those programs and the overlap on technology, and they said even if you didn't follow all the way through with it, the exposure in the Chapter 74 program to technology is something that may interest you to go somewhere else with the education. It was a way to attract some kids into it that weren't necessarily thinking about it, and it was a way to expand the interest of it to a kid who didn't necessarily want to go all the way through. So I think along with the space that you need is that idea of the understanding of what's at the core of it and what overlaps.
Sure, that's a great point.
So I did some work in Christina, Delaware a bunch of years back, and they had 18,000, 20,000 students and 4 really big high schools. And they did career paths that were almost magnet.
Yep.
And 3 or 4 of them at each one of the high schools, and they were closely aligned. So one might be theater arts at one of the high schools, the other one might be performing arts. So if you didn't get into one high school, you got into the other. And the idea was to just run these programs that would attract everybody from the really artistically inclined all the way over to athletes in theater arts, because theater arts is so much more than just who's standing on the stage, but what's the technology, what's the writing of the play, what's the presentation of it, who does the stage sets. And they expanded it in such a way that you got this interest across a really broad group, and then celebrated the presentation of the play or the production or whatever it was. So that's a similar way of overlapping your Chapter 74 offerings, is what can I find as a core? So instead of saying, take this because it's a legal reporting career path, but to be able to say, take this and you'll learn all about computers, and you'll learn about law, and you'll learn about this, and you'll learn about all these little pieces that will make you a far better rounded student, and you may take that and go somewhere else. So I think that's where you get that crossover between the 20% who might not have any inclination to go to college, but have a great success rate somewhere else, and that cross-pollination with the 80% who are heading to college for whatever reason they're doing it.
And they might. The other part that really worries me too is we ask 13 and 14-year-olds to say, you know, what are you going to be when you grow up? Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, so you want to be a CNA? What? You're asking a 13-year-old that? And then you put them in a CNA medical assisting program at a vocational school? I'm like, that to me that's a disservice on the other hand. But what I hear you saying, Greg, is that overlapping piece is really important because I want to make sure, my goal is to make sure that kids have options. I want them to have every single option they want. If they want to try one program, that's great. They want to try something else, that's great. They want to try something else, that's great. Like, you want to give them, that's the idea of that kind of comprehensive liberal arts kind of, right? Like, just shift and think and try different things and
Is
experiment.
that what, I mean, we've talked about the
You know what I'm saying?
superintendent consortium, but we've also talked about EdHub. Sometimes I get confused as to which
What's
falls
where?
under
Yes,
the
yep.
other.
Yep.
But isn't the goal, or is one of the goals eventually to have this menu of options with
Yes.
like centers at the different contributing high schools?
Yes.
So this would be, probably wouldn't be fine arts, right? But you'd have a manufacturing hub in Uxbridge, and then
That's
a
exactly the goal,
biomedical
Sarah. Yep.
in Blackstone.
Mhm.
And students could
That's the
select
goal.
from the menu,
Yep.
right?
That's the exact goal. So that we build, through the Blackstone Valley Excel program, we build a portfolio of classes that we're going to be offering each semester. So we've already picked the 3 I think we're offering in the fall, and the 3, I don't remember what they are off the top of my head. They're in my notes. I could find it if you wanted me to. And the 3 we're doing in the spring, because we're up in the spring. Our high school is to host.
But these are after school.
They're after school and they're
Kind of trying to do here is to try to make it part of the school.
embedded in the day. Yeah.
Right.
So, but yeah.
So Greg, am I hearing, I don't know if I'm hearing you correctly, or maybe I'm just extrapolating this. It sounds like for each of those programs that we might be looking for to identify like the core concepts and components that are more job skills or life skills that you're going to get from that type of career training. So even if you enroll in it, in your, whether it's electrical work or becoming in advanced manufacturing, there are specific skills that, regardless of whether or not you go into that career, you're going to come away with these skill sets.
Right.
And maybe across multiple areas in the career path, maybe across multiple pathways, there's some consistent components. Like interviewing skills in public. Again, I'm just
Right.
shooting things from the hip, but interviewing skills and public presentation, like that might be in 5 different careers, and everyone's going to get it, but you're getting it through this work that you're doing in a career pathway.
Like a common set of just competencies.
competencies.
That are overlapping
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You know what, though, this conversation it's so interesting because we're talking about space and that's kind of how we got on this. But to me, there is a major theme emerging as we start thinking about space and what's next with, the kind of the structure of the space of the high school and middle school, whatever the combination is. And that is that focus on career exploration and career development, and that needing to be really strengthened.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if everybody, that's what I'm hearing. But,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you face up to is the reality of a critical mass of students to be able to get a wide enough offering, and you're not going to get to the 1,000-student VOTEC school, and you're not going to get to a 1,000-student general curriculum school. So by offering it across the region, you have the ability to break that down and offer that out a little bit more easily and readily. So I think the piece as it comes back around is to maximize what each one of the existing high schools has for space, which is what you were talking about earlier, Jason. And then say, okay, what void can we fill? And I'll go back to my caveat when we first started that probably no one remembers, is you never build to a cult of personality and you never build to a single program. Because Jason may come up with the greatest idea in education, you may build a building and a program that works around him and then he leaves. And suddenly there isn't that driving force anymore. And you don't build it to a particular program specific, because what happens if that program fades? Or suddenly someone else builds another school and they bring that in. So you're looking for a space that remains incredibly flexible and agile and able to provide you with a number of different opportunities within that space. So when you get over to the career tech side, those spaces by their very nature tend to have a range of similarities in space between high bay shop type space associated with clean room or classroom and or storage space. So within that arrangement, I could put a welding shop, I can put a wood shop, I can put a car shop, I can put a computer shop.
That makes great sense. Yeah.
And so, sure, that's why we want to start looking at that element of the school. I think the hard part when it comes to getting the students engaged in it is getting past the stigma of what does it mean to be in something that isn't a general curriculum class. We still perpetuate that stigma to a certain degree. And the schools that you see that are very successful at that are the ones that just celebrate the offerings. It doesn't there is no differentiation between if you go into that room or this room, this is how the school runs. Yep. And that's a cultural change that I think sounds like you're on the way to bringing it around quite readily.
And that goes back to the issue. Again, it's a good problem, I think, that we have a wait list for the welding program that we're running after school, but we can't make enough space in kids' schedules for our PBS, our audiovisual program, or for the biomed program. Mm-hmm. Like we can't. More kids want it than they have room in their schedule. So again, that's a good. And we picked the biomed pathway intentionally because of being in the hub of, the biomedical field right up the street in Worcester, and had a lot of conversations with with the leaders in that area through the Blackstone Valley Chamber. So like that was an intentional decision, and our kids jumped at it.
Right.
But we don't, we're trying to find the space in their day to actually take it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good problem, and it's a serious problem because if you don't address it, by the time the enthusiasm for the offering wears out, the people wanting to put up with it will fade.
And we'll get a good sense of that. Next year, we're running Biomed 1 and Biomed 2. Right. So we're running that second level course, and we're running the Manufacturing Engineering 1, in addition to all the other. So now we have that challenge of looking at the courses, and it's like, ooh, there's 6 kids here. There's 4 kids enrolled in this. So it's like, but all the other kids are scheduled. So
what might be interesting to see in that, Jason, is check with some of the VOTEC schools and see what their persistence rates are for rising grade to grade within a program, and see if it correlates to what you say. That would be an interesting piece. I mean, granted, the VOTEC schools are a little bit more focused, so their persistence rate is probably higher than what you would expect. But it would be interesting to see. And let's see, Wacona is district out to the west end of the state. That's a regional. I think it's got 6 towns in it that has similar type of program offerings and has had for quite a while. They'd be a good source of data for persistence rates. Prouty has had their programs for a few years now. Trying to think of another general curriculum with some Chapter 74 program. Who?
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
This question, I'm not familiar with like Prouty's programs or some of the other ones that you may have experienced. In their pathways, do their pathways entail just career-specific courses, or are the core competencies embedded in those courses connected to the careers? Is it this kid chooses like this, health sciences pathway, and they're taking algebra as it pertains to the health sciences, and they're taking literature and writing as it pertains to the health sciences, so that you kind of knock out that piece of, well, how do you fit in the classes that they need with some of the optional pieces? Like I think back to college, and I'm like, I took calculus, and I was a health science major, and there was calculus for health science majors, or there was calculus for math majors. Yep. And I wonder I don't know if you've seen career pathway programs that integrate the core competencies and the specific courses that might be needed into that pathway.
I can get you an answer on Tasqua and Wacona because we did those 2 buildings, so we did the programming for those. So I can get that answer pretty quickly. Prouty, I know, is working with Dr. Jay Barry who was in Southwick, who's now with the Mass Association of Regional School Districts.
They're trying to get a new high school, right?
Yes.
Is that Spencer, East Brookfield?
Yes, Spencer and East Brookfield.
They've tried how many times?
Yeah.
It's kind of the running joke when it gets advertised.
Yeah. There's a long story behind that school. We don't really need to go into it.
No.
But I'll call Jay and see what he might be able to offer. He's probably willing to come down to a meeting and just talk about how it's all working. He was the superintendent in Southwick Tolland when we did the combined and made their middle school, high school, pulled them together, and then they did a lower elementary, upper elementary. I've talked to Jay a couple times. I think he'd be more than willing to come down and kind of sit here and chat about this as well if you're interested.
So Jason, can I ask, all these pathways, are we accepting school choice into those? And are we advertising the availability of spots to help
Yeah.
fill those classes?
We just, the school committee we just did our annual conversation and public vote on that the end of May. We have about a little over 50 students a year that choice in for the district.
And how many, do you know if the pathways are drawing people in?
That I don't know.
Yeah, do the
I'm not
towns
sure.
around
The
us-
because most of them are at that work predominantly is at the high school level.
Yeah.
A lot of the kids are choicing in before that, and by the time many of the high school kids are choicing in, there's usually an issue in their current high school
Yeah.
that they are exiting from,
A personal issue or, yeah.
or an issue
Yeah,
with.
that's why I don't know if advertising to surrounding schools that we have this biomedical, but if it's already full with our kids, that won't help.
Well, and the idea behind that is if we can we're trying to keep, it's, how do I say?
It's not it's not to
Not
take away
fighting with
from.
one another.
Yeah,
Kinda
I mean, it's
retain, yeah.
better, it's like, well, no, you don't need to leave us to go to Northbridge to do
yeah,
that anymore.
that's
Like, you
true.
can actually stay here and you can take that course there anyways and still be, because a lot of the kids don't necessarily want to leave BMR, but they want that particular program,
Okay.
you know? So we're trying to get both bites of that apple.
I was thinking there were two different sets of programs, the ones that are the Tuesday nights and then the ones that are fitting into their schedule.
It's funny you mentioned that, Mary, because it was last year at the superintendent's conference, and I was on the Cape, and I remember driving down the Cape, and I heard on the radio advertisements for schools looking for school choice. And they were talking about their public district, like trying to encourage
Take kids
kids
from
to
other
choice
towns.
out of other districts. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's like, and I struggled with it because I'm like, that's
And
great.
billboards,
That's a
radio.
great idea from an advertising perspective, but it creates a bit of a debacle between towns and communities.
Well, it's no different than the agricultural schools
Yeah.
advertising to our students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wonder too, if we have these programs, how much are we advertising even publicly that we're working collaboratively with these programs just to keep the kids within our districts to say, I have these options here in the district as opposed to, or they're developing, because especially, and again, I think we need more of a foothold with what is developed prior to saying, look, when you get to the high school level or when you get to the middle school level, you'll have these career exploration options and these career pathway options. But knowing that in advance
We
might
definitely
stop the
yeah.
kids from going to a different program or a vocational school because they say, you know what, I could get the same thing at the vocational school as I do. And I know that's what we're talking about, but the advertisement piece of it, and
The PR.
the
and
PR is
bringing
like
the
a whole
parents
other,
in for an open
whole
house.
other leg.
Yeah, 6th, 7th grade open houses for the programs at the high school, not 8th grade.
Yep.
We gotta get the PR out there.
Yeah.
You still do assemblies in the school? Forgive me, I haven't graduated for a couple of years, but do an assembly at the school at 5th or 6th grade level where, you bring down whoever the pathways leader is, that
We do those, yeah.
the opportunities at the high school are, for career pathways and start doing that as part of an earlier thing to show these kids, there's other options to look at besides going to Valley Tech, going to Aggie, going to Tri-County.
Yeah, we definitely do that. We do.
Greg, I believe, and I know we're all talking about really great stuff, You mentioned 5 to 6 things, and
Yeah, we didn't get that far.
I was taking them
I
down, and I
stopped
got to 3.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's where you got the 3. That's fine.
We got excited.
You
We got stuck on educational
Good.
offerings.
Yeah, I got education.
That's a good thing to be stuck on.
I mean, I'm not trying to
No,
veer the group, but
Yeah, no, you don't.
Brainstorm
You don't
three,
normally
so-
get through all these in the first try anyway. So
Huh?
you don't get through these in the first try anyway.
yeah.
The fourth one that I have is building preferences, and this is sort of correlates what we were talking about, but within both your own opinion and the town overall, how are each one of the buildings perceived? And we got into a bit of that of, you can't possibly take that building down. It was fine when I was there. It must be fine now still. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What is the potential? And this is going back to where Jason was talking about. You've got these spaces. What can you do with them? So what is the potential? And then pick your favorite child. Which one has the most potential, and why do you think that? And that sometimes you look at like the high school site and say the site's got great potential. Building not so much so, and that's a legitimate offer. And then what do you do with anything that may change radically? If it comes offline, what do you do with it? You have to be able to perceive it as not being a school, and what's its impact on the community if it's suddenly turned over back to, in the case of the elementary schools, turned back to its respective town. What's the impact on the town from that? Because that's going to go directly to what kind of support can you garner for anything that may come out of this. And then the fifth one comes back around to people again, and it's community. What's the level of understanding at this point of what we're doing and how you're doing it? And then how can that be increased? What are the ways to increase the level of understanding? What's the perception of each one of the buildings? And we're back once again into opinion of the buildings by the public. Really broadly, what needs to be better understood of the district as a whole? And that gets down to everything from the buildings to the students to the administration to the board. That's a really broad question of what needs to be better conveyed. And I think it's obvious that you're going in the right direction on a lot of things with curriculum offerings. The feedback we got on the opinion opinion polling that we did, showing the increased level of satisfaction with transparency and communication. You got great scores on that for a district. And so you say, poke around and go, well, what else can we do? What else needs to happen here? And then finally, what are the best ways to increase the level? Is it websites? Is it public meetings? Is it a newsletter? Is it newspaper articles that you're working with, or a local web news service that you start working with to get a regular article running of here's life in Blackstone Millville Regional School District. Here's where we're going. Here's how we're doing it. Come and join us. And that's one of those things that takes a person or a group that is going to routinely get those articles out, always written in the same format, always in the same way, and always out on time, so that people know to look for it and can work with it.
So there's still a large contingent of seniors or whatever in Blackstone that aren't online, but they do listen to the local Woonsocket radio station, and that's where they get their information. We have the Enlightener. We have now the John Eldridge show is back on, and I know the next guest in 2 weeks is Dr. Fitzpatrick. So it's a live call-in cable show. It's done at Blackstone Town Hall, and you could present your ideas. You'd be interviewed by Mr. Eldridge and Mrs. Ostabenis, and people could call in and ask questions. So they just got back. They did one show last Monday. I wasn't available, and they got one in 2 weeks. And I know Dr. Fitzpatrick is the guest.
It's called the what?
The new John Eldridge show. And the one thing that I hear over and over again is that the school just takes our money and goes off, and we don't know how they do it. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that they think that we have Blackstone, Millville, and the schools, which is good. The schools are now considered one, but they just feel like they don't know what the schools are doing. But
Yeah.
go to a meeting.
It's interesting too, because we,
Yeah.
our parents, so we have
An
a,
update email.
we have a survey, phone call survey.
Yep.
Our admin assistants are actually just cold calling families, trying to get people to respond to us. And one of the questions is, do you feel the district's making progress in their goals? 60% said yes.
Good.
Well, 35% said what goals? Right. So in I'm sure Tara and Sarah and Carrie can, like, we spend so much time communicating. We do videos on our goals. We send them out to everybody. We talk about them. We did Facebook Lives. We go to, they don't know.
I know.
So we have to think of another way to, we thought Facebook would be a good place. Like, so we went right to Facebook Live. Parents are on it. We get
hits the
1,000
parents.
hits.
It hits the parents, though. It doesn't hit the.
But even that, our parents still,
Yeah, but we were only polling
calling
the
the
parents.
that's what I'm saying.
We're
Like,
not
that's
cold
what,
calling random community members.
It goes back to that. Like, parents only want to know what they are specifically, like, a lot of them don't either think about the goals, or they specifically want to know what their child's doing in 4th grade or whatever,
Yeah. Before we talk
Right
about
now.
Too many emails
softball,
from
let's tell you about our goals.
I have too many emails that say, from Jason DeFalco, and it's inundating. It's every day or 2 a day, or there's so many.
they're not all
emails.
coming from me. I send one a week.
Well, the COVID ones probably did seem like they were like constant, but now
as a
hopefully
parent,
those
how
are.
many times do you skip those now? Because it's like, oh, another school email. It's just
Yeah.
want to tell me how many new cases of COVID is. You're not even looking at the email anymore.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if we didn't send them,
I've forced
I'd get
myself to
slammed
read
for not being
both
now
transparent.
because-
So that's
Can't win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lose-lose.
And that's the 60% that know what the goals are and know
Yeah.
a lot of what's happening.
Right.
And
So how do we
wanna
grab
know
that
more.
other 30
And like you're saying,
And then
get
the-
the community
That's
as a
right.
whole, not non-parents.
that are not in the
Yeah.
schools that don't know? How do we grab that?
And especially with COVID and everything that's been going on, like it's hard to make it a community center when, there are things you have to do to keep the kids safe, right? Like, you can't let everyone in every day just to make people feel welcome and a part of, okay? But that being said, like, there was, I don't remember who brought it up, but the idea of, instead of mothballing a building or a part of a building, like, what could be used by the town? Like, if it were a Blackstone building, like, can you have a senior center in a wing of a building coexisting with, school programming or administrative offices or whatever it is? You know what I mean? I don't know where I was going with that, but, like, it would be nice to have a community hub and have it within the district and bring everyone together. And that's something to consider as we go through this process.
Well, no, I hear exactly where you're going with that, Sarah, because you're connecting the two pieces. We're talking about the use of the facilities, and we kind of not veered entirely, but we're talking about how do we get people to understand what's happening within the district. And if what's happening in the community is connected to what's happening in the district, that's a way to get those people that are not really aware. Like you're saying, if there is senior programs happening from the district, then they're going to know more about what's happening in the district, and then their kids are going to know more, and their kids might be the parents of our kids that might be the 30% that aren't taking the poll, that aren't getting the goals. But again, every single connection that the district makes to the community is strengthening our message that we're trying to put out there, and what it is that we're trying to accomplish.
And I'm thinking about what Tara was saying too, that that parent that's really focused on what my students in 4th grade. I'm living in this 4th grade kind of headspace bubble right now, right? So I think I'm thinking about how do you not inundate that parent, but let the parent know what's going on, because the feedback we're getting, again, just to the phone calls, the parents have been awesome. We spoke with 45, I think 46 as of today, just random homeroom kind of list phone calls, and people are calling us back, picking up. They're being really great. It's just interesting that, that percentage don't necessarily know, but that doesn't mean that they're saying the district's a mess, no one's doing anything. They're not saying that, right? They're just saying, oh, we like what goals? my kid's doing great. He loves his teacher.
Right,
It's like,
right.
That's good though. Like that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So I guess I come back to the question of how much, and Greg, maybe you can help speak to this. When you're going through this process, you're talking about that ongoing, kind of update, right? Letter writer goes out to the newspaper, wherever that place is that all this information goes, and the interviews on, which I think is a great idea, Mary, on the cable access show.
Yeah.
How much have you seen others spending on that communication piece, and who is spending the time on that? Like have you found from your experience the community really wants to hear from? Is it Mary, and is it like parents and committee? Is it administration? Is it all of us? Is it, what I'm asking?
Yeah,
I think it's Tara.
Everyone wants
It's
to hear
generally
from her.
a subcommittee of just 1 or 2 or 3 people who
Okay.
have the ability to write well and post things. It's got a
No, I can write, I just can't speak. Oh, we can trade.
it's got a checks and balances. It has someone who reviews it to make sure it comports with what you're trying to say. And the most interesting ones, the ones that keep the most interest from readers, are the ones that have a journey. They're not just always an update. So I kind of start saying, through this, we'll convey the evolution of Blackstone Millville Regional School District into the district of the future. Follow us. And so you stay with that theme. And when you change themes, you tell people you're changing themes. But yeah, something that becomes a constant update becomes a delete bait. It's like, well, it's you guys again. But something that tells the story of what you're doing and puts examples out there, schools that people can go look at or districts that did something. Go check this out. This is kind of cool. We thought this was neat. Or we thought this was neat, but it's not really. And here's why we don't think it works for us. Something that opens that conversation instead of just being a one-way report. It's encouraging people to go out and do something.
To avoid the agitation of, whoops, someone's telling me something else again. There's no room for discussion. You're already giving. We don't want that. I want that open dialogue.
So is that better through social media nowadays than through an email? Because it's not like I'm going to reply to the capital planning subcommittee email and say, well, I think you should consider this. Whereas on social media, you'll get some comments and things from people. Is that a better avenue?
It's becoming more and more common to have a curated Twitter or Facebook account and really thick skin.
Yeah, you need very, very thick skin, which is fine. We found the
Tell me about it.
Facebook Lives to be, because even if, and Jesse does them for us, even if you can't tune in at the moment, we'll get over 1,000 views. Now, whether they're watching the whole thing or not, I don't know. But, it could be a click on it, you move on to something else. But
Yeah,
that seemed to be somewhat helpful.
you tailor down to relatively short episodes
Yep.
of each and a regular posting date. Try to save it as close as possible. And this idea of you're never going to get 100% buy-in, and you're never going to convince the people who don't want to go anywhere to go somewhere. So the people who want the district to evolve and can understand it are already on board. It's the people between that and the never-evers that are the ones you're really working with.
So I think that's a great idea. I know Boylston Library did that. They had one trustee doing it because we are a board. I don't know if we need to be careful of open meeting law, so it should be one person doing the posting. We don't want to end up with a quorum. And then secondly, I just wanted to follow up on what Sarah said with, did the seniors come to the school? So, and I know security has changed a lot, but many moons ago in high school, every Friday the seniors came to third lunch. And they were part of the school. And they stayed after the seniors got up and left and went to class. They stayed there and had coffee and chatted. And different people from the local town would come in and talk to them. They'd have a guest speaker occasionally. So bringing them into the building and letting them see the needs, and other groups, we had talked about as the selectmen, maybe we go have a meeting 1 week at the library, 1 week somewhere else,
Rotate around. Yeah.
Yeah. So
The idea of having seniors in for lunch and a guest speaker, and you mix the students in, is intriguing.
yeah.
I'd never thought about that till you started talking about it, and it'd be one of those things where I'm a rising senior and I'm sitting next to someone who's retired, listening to the same guest speaker. There's definitely some intergenerational learning going on there, even if not at every time. And as importantly for gaining some support for a building program or a change to the district, it's equal parts letting someone see the school as it is seeing the enthusiasm of the students in the school.
And they want to see the students. They don't want to feel old.
Right.
They want the student interaction. They like that.
That's an awesome idea.
We did it for Brimfield too. It worked.
I really like that idea. I did a early childhood education center, ages 3 through 7, and it shared a building with a community center and a senior center. And the seniors would come over and have lunch, and the kids would go over and have lunch with the seniors, and went back and forth. The only source of friction was the playground and the outdoor patio for the seniors were too close. And the noise between those two.
They wanted a little quiet.
Ooh, that was the first complaint we got is, can you make those kids be quiet? No, that ain't gonna happen.
So the town of Sharon has a community center, COA. Nobody wants to call them senior centers anymore. They're a community center. And some of the seniors go home at 2 when the kids start getting off the bus. Some of them stay. They enjoy tutoring the kids. They enjoy having them read to them. It's a great crossover.
Yeah, we talked about I met with the Council on Aging directors, and we talked about sending our seniors there to go to the centers. And there was some interest. There was definitely some interest with like maybe some smaller groups that could play cards and kind of hang out, have lunch, that kind of thing. But we did not talk about having the seniors come to the high school. That's a super idea.
They went right through the cafeteria line. Some needed assistance. They got whatever was for lunch on Friday. They got.
They wanted that hot lunch, huh?
That's how they did it then. They
cool.
got
It's
the
funny you mentioned
pizza
the library and the select board teaming up with the library. We just went on a walk. The school district went on a walk with the library, and we were talking about ideas and ways to engage with one another in the community. And one of the things that we were saying was maybe the library is hosting like a music session where kids from our band and our music students or our honor music students, if they're doing it for community service, the seniors are coming in and our kids are playing for them in the at the library. And then it's just, again, it's getting everyone together in that joint place, getting everyone in the community involved. I think those ideas as we're moving forward, like how do we get the message out, those are huge. Those are huge.
To the point that both of you are making, Greg, have you found that in the other places where you have been, there's more community support when you have those shared spaces, when you have, because I could see that being like a win-win,
There's definitely some territorial turf wars.
Yeah.
But it's addressing the needs of each one and then finding those overlaps.
And I met with the town administrators. I don't know if Greg's still there or if the new.
Yeah, he is. Yep.
He is. Okay, I wasn't sure if our new
He's
one has
helping us
started.
transition.
Oh, excellent. So I had met with the 2 town administrators about adult education. We had a lengthy conversation because I know in the Millville town plan they have an adult education goal, and I believe in the Blackstone town plan there's also an adult education goal. So when we're thinking about that shared space, my question to the town administrators was, how do I get information from the community on what types of courses they would want? So for instance, if we're running classes for kids on advanced manufacturing that can lead to a certification, why can't we do that for adults? Because that lifts the whole community. So we just had these conversations about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We were talking about how to get that feedback from our residents. Like, here's what, if you're running a program on X, this would be great. But when I think about shared space, and I'm thinking about how you're talking about the vocational schools, build out just like specs for different types of space, right? It's not for a program.
Right.
That would be really important, because if we have a group of adults that would want to take some type of a certification program, it's something you could run it and then something different in that space when that program is finished. So we were thinking about, this to me isn't just a like a school building.
Yeah.
It's actually the community structure.
When you have your coordinator come on board, that would help. But what are the big employers in town? Is it BJ's? in Uxbridge? Is it Milford Hospital?
Yeah.
What skill sets do the employees need to get pulled up?
Well, that moves you down to employees in the working population. The other thing is with adult education, can you get it a mix of mentoring with your students in your VOTEC type programs with a person who may be retired at 65, 70 years old and wants to, isn't ready for a senior center and really does have some value that they could lend in a mentoring role within a classroom or shop. And shop is the easy one to pick on, but an attorney, an architect, anybody that it would be willing to come in and make a commitment to mentor, to have the access to the classroom.
And it's like, how do you increase kind of what you were talking about earlier, that I kind of equated it to that standard of living in terms of like your salary and your our demographic from 2010 to 2020, our free and reduced lunch numbers in 10 years went from 10% to just under 40. So if that was the whole trigger behind I want to talk to the town administrators, like what can we do to help the community? What are the classes that we can offer that would lead to higher paying jobs? Because ultimately that then feeds back into the system, because the kids, and all the research is clear, right? Like when you're not living at that income level, students have a different opportunity all around as far as learning, social emotional development, all of that.
The guidelines for free and reduced lunch have not changed in 10 years, I assume. Not exponentially changed. Not like it used to be you had to make 20 grand a year. Now it's 50 or less.
No.
Okay. I thought I remembered that from our meeting with Maureen, where she said those guidelines are so out of date, but because then that makes that number even more staggering.
Well, her point, Maureen was making the point that, the guidelines are like, they're literally lines and it's a chart.
Yeah.
And it's, if you have X number of children and you earn $45,000, you qualify. If you earn $45,500, you don't qualify. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I suppose you have to draw the line somewhere, but
I just wanted to make sure those lines hadn't really swayed in that 10 years that you were using for those numbers, because I remembered that really stood out to me from our meeting with her.
yeah, it's jarring, some of the information regarding that.
So the idea again, how do we use? And I was trying to think like, how do we use our current space? Because I don't want to wait for that, to be able to help our families with their furthering their education.
Right. But another thing to think about in terms of engagement is on a project-based learning basis of, is there something that can be done that can engage across a wider age range? So in England, you see a bit of it with classic car restoration, where someone will bring a car to a technical school to be restored, and the restoration is guided by the teacher or professional, and most of the work is done by the students. And they're earning apprenticeship time, because England and Europe are still big on apprenticeship programs. So they're earning apprenticeship time, which helps them move on into a real apprenticeship. Someone's getting a car restored, they're picking up some of the cost, and the school is picking up the rest of the cost. And it may take you 2 years to get a car restored, but if you can do it yourself, it'll take you 4 years, so what's the difference? And you see it with some of the building trades as well, where you're actually building everything, simple things from sheds to building a house. We're partnering with one of the, Houses for Humanity, and putting students to work with mentors in a program like that. So they may not get all the way through the complete construction of the house, but when they drive down the street, they said, I helped build that. It is a big step forward too.
You mentioned a possible sixth. I don't know if we hit it already.
I got all 5 of mine, and what I'm going to do with this is I kind of do my notes color coded on things you said and things I said, and I'll send these over to you guys tomorrow. So I've got a couple to follow in on, but there's one that I try to get out eventually when we're doing this is there's essentially 4 personality types when you're trying to move things forward. You've got what I call facilitators. They're people that help you reach out to people and connect, and you'll go through your list of friends and you'll come up and go, yeah, that's the person who can do that. There's motivators. There's people who manage to get things done or get people to do things. There's communicators who can talk to anybody. My wife is one of those. You can put her in a room with someone and she'd be best friends in half an hour. And then there's supporters. There's people that are generally in the background, but if something needs to be moved from here to there, or someone needs to be moved along, they're the guys that do it. So rather than talking in broad generalities to the whole group, try to identify those people who may do that and identify what they can do to help you get it moved forward. And it's it can be extraordinarily frustrating to look at an entire group and wonder why no one thing got done. But when you look at what needs to be done and look at the people who can help you get it done, you can move those forward. So that's one. It takes a while to develop those touch points and who you can turn to and rely on. But it goes right back to that weekly, monthly, bi-weekly update newsletter. That's exactly what you're talking about. Who can you find who can write that and know that it's going to get done every time period?
Just for clarification now, are you talking about within our group or
It'll
us
be
identifying those people within the community,
Yeah.
or both?
both.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, I think too often people get a bad rap as just being an ideas person. They just walk in and they spew a bunch of ideas and they leave. But that's actually a good role for somebody. They can be the communicator, they can be the motivator. To have someone come in and just go, just imagine what it would be like if it was this. And someone goes, yeah, it's a good idea. No, the person who came up with the idea probably
mic
isn't
drop
capable.
and
Yeah, exactly.
I created the school configuration.
Yeah.
How we have to do that? How we have to do that?
How do we get it done? I don't know.
I thought of it.
All right, I thought of it.
That's for you guys to figure out.
I'm the motivator.
Oh boy.
1% inspiration, 99% perspiration.
There you go.
That's it. That's funny.
That's a helpful layout, though, Greg. That makes sense, actually. That's good.
Very much so.
So that was the end of my list for this evening.
So what I think there's 2 pieces, regardless of what else we do during this session, that we should accomplish. One is identify future meeting dates. I wanted to clarify, I had a great question. I think we briefly were talking about it at the last meeting. Were we talking about like the first Wednesday of every month? Or did we just happen to come across this day that worked?
I think we tried that, and then
I think
fell
we tried
into...
and it, yeah. Do we wanna look at extending it out a little bit?
Do we have an end date, like a goal? Like, is it next year's town meeting? Is it, when do we need like something?
Great.
Because I mean, do we need to back into how many meetings we need to have?
The timeline, that initial timeline of, Greg and I know the middle meeting. So between the first one and this one, I was not at that. So maybe that was discussed there. But that timeline of 3 years for this and 4 years for that. And I'm not going to lie. Like, I left here with little kind of heart palpitation. Like, oh my gosh, that's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long
That is a
timeline.
really long time.
So
like,
5 months.
Where,
No.
like, where? I guess my question is, where is the,
Middle ground.
wiggle room on
Yeah.
that?
Well, I think a good master planning effort without the full piece of getting the public buy-in, you're going to spend probably 4 to 6 months reasonably, just essentially doing what we're doing here, and an ever-increasing group size, with hopefully 1 or 2 public meetings in between where you just open the doors up and say, come on in and engage with us.
By 4 to 6 months, you mean 4 to 6 meetings?
Yeah, if you met once a month and
At
did some
3,
homework
right?
in between.
Right.
Very true. Well,
Halfway there.
Yeah. You got a lot done tonight. But that relies on people doing homework when in between meetings, because we can come and facilitate these all day long, but it relies on you coming back saying, you asked me to think about this, and this, and here I am.
Right.
And then to get to a level of public buy-in is usually the other 6 months of that. And so if you overlap it and try to do it all at once, you end up at about that year period of getting the people who are on the fence to understand what it is you're doing, do some school tours, do enough meetings, get enough information out there to where people get comfortable with the idea that some kind of change is coming.
So we need to back into the schedule. When is the statement of interest due?
Typically January's.
Yeah, so we need to figure that. We need
Yeah.
to start, that's our end date. We need to go backwards from that.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. You're in June right now. You can certainly get a statement of interest filed by January if you had some direction, and then that lets you continue to work past that for building community buy-in and support.
And then does it go to town meeting for like approval, or is that depends on what we come up with in the financial?
Statement of interest, I think, can be submitted
I don't think it's town meeting. I think it's.
directly from the
if there's
administration or from the
funding
from the
component.
district. It comes from the district. I think there was I'd have to go back through my emails, but I think they just sent something out about statements of interest, the
For
window.
the accelerated repair. I saw that one.
Yeah, there was the but they also listed when the core was going to be opening.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the design fee that would have to go to town meeting
Mhm.
if we decide to fund.
Right.
Because this is just a study, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so once we go to look at the options, we'd have to hire a designer.
So for the next meeting, do we need to come in and say, okay, we're gonna brainstorm about a new high school on that site? Pros, cons, questions that we're gonna go look into. Like, is that what we need to start doing?
How do
Like
we get
actual
through these
concrete-
5 points first?
Yeah, that's
what
his
I can do is
job.
I'll take out all the notes that I put in my outline for tonight and send it over to Matt. He can send it out to everybody, and that can be your it could actually be your working guideline for the next 4 meetings. There's 5 points in there. Some of them overlap,
Okay,
and
So
so
the-
some of the meetings will be a bit shorter,
okay,
and some of them will be like tonight was. Like, let's just keep going. This is great.
okay.
So if we send that out, we effectively set the next level of study for the educational program tonight with this communication. Just this conversation tonight pretty much set up your homework for education. What else can you do on the programming? Perception of the buildings, what do you do with the buildings? Maybe we combine those into one night. But if I send this out, feel free to go, yeah, that doesn't make any sense, or I need more explanation on that. But we could divide that out, and that could be the meeting agenda for the
Okay.
next 2 or 3 meetings.
Okay.
So, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, it's important not to go back and tell people we're gonna build a new high school.
Right.
At this
Yeah.
point, we're looking at the program, we're looking at the buildings to see what's wrong. Once the statement of interest is accepted by the Mass School Building Authority, that's when the designer looks at, can you add on to this building? Can you renovate this building, or do you need a new building?
Okay.
And they come back to us with the findings.
So the statement of interest doesn't have to include any type of intent?
That's what I thought.
Statement of interest is saying that in studying the district, we feel that we need to replace something. Whatever the building is, you need to say what it is.
Okay, so we do need to come up with some configuration that we're thinking we want to go with.
Yeah, and it could be saying that given
Not necessarily the design of said
Nope.
Right.
building, but we need to say, where are the grades?
Right.
What are the buildings we're keeping? What are the buildings we're looking to turn into community centers?
Yeah, that's effectively your master plan. That's
Yep.
what you're working on now, and from that's
Briefly.
going to become your statement of interest is going to be an adjunct from that. And what you might typically say in the statement of interest, say the high school is effectively the target building, you'll have not only the condition of the building, you'll also have the Blackstone Excel program offers this, and to further that, we need this. Our enrollment is doing this, and to capture some of those students who are going out, we think we need this. And they're pretty funky about the statement of interest and that it has to be generated by the district. I can't generate it for you.
Sure.
And the OPM can't generate it for you.
Right.
But the master plan needs to be in place before you issue the SOI. And so you're in pretty good shape on that, and the facilities assessment's there, so that's in good shape. But I couldn't see a reason why you should not be able to have that all buttoned up and submitted by the end of the year.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, and then as Mary said, from there, once it's accepted, then you need to hire an OPM and get into a much different level of thinking and doing.
Yeah.
And I will not be applying for that OPM, just to make it clear. I will volunteer in my town, I will not work in my town.
Yeah, that is a good point. You do not need to hire one if you have an MCPPO certified person who you can deputize and prove that they have time.
So if that got us through the study phase, I would do it as a volunteer for the district.
Yeah.
When it went to construction and bidding, you'd have to hire somebody.
Sure. Yeah.
But I would volunteer my time for the initial phase.
Yeah, that's a big piece, and it's one of the other things it does is provides a far smoother transition because you're not being swayed by someone's perception of what you're trying to do. That's where we always run into troubles with another professional group coming in midway through and going, I don't know, maybe you should do this. Well, no, we already want to go this way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
We've hit that with small projects, but we've hit the, yeah.
You've had a good OPM so far, and you know, and on that caveat, if you wanted to procure one and go out to bid, because there is a lot of extra work that OPMs can help you with if you're limited for staff as a district. And then one other note that I'm sure you'll get into with the statement of interest, if for any reason one of the schools does not use it as a school, it becomes surplus and it goes back to the town to decide what to do with it.
yeah.
And then, as you said, we need to figure out the apportioned payback of
Right.
MSBA funding on any of said buildings.
Right.
Because I'm pretty sure that every one of our buildings has something.
Yeah,
I don't think it's astronomical though.
you don't want those surprises.
Yeah.
We say astronomical, but any of the numbers that we're talking about when the community hears them sounds pretty astronomical. You know, you say astronomical for us is like over $2 million or $3 million, but 700,000, which may not be astronomical, you say that out loud, and to a lot of other people it does sound astronomical. But I do understand the point.
Yeah.
You're right.
Every dollar matters.
Yep, absolutely. So, to the scheduling point, I think that was super helpful. We're now saying, okay, 4 6 months master plan overlapped with the 4 to 6 months of public buy-in, get our statement of interest ready for January. So, does the first Wednesday of each month work? Because it sounds like we'll be meeting on a monthly basis, including through the summer.
So July 7th, August 4th,
So
September
that's
1st.
vacation week for a lot of people. I don't know how other people feel
We
about
could
that.
shift, yeah,
Yeah, that's
we
what-
could certainly shift as we're looking
Through
through
the
these dates.
Do you have a
away
sample, Greg, a sample timeline or like an example of that we could look at that?
Or do you want to wait? Do you want to wait till Greg shares his notes with me and Jason and I can discuss, and then maybe just reach back out to the group about scheduling? I'm not suggesting we have to get everything calendared now. There were questions like Adrian was asking.
Oh, yeah, I think
Yeah,
schedule, if we can schedule.
I think at least scheduling our next meeting.
Yeah,
would
at
be
least the next
beneficial,
meeting.
especially
Yeah, I just
especially
was
as summers
wondering.
come up. Like,
Yeah,
I didn't know, because she was saying, is there something that I can put in my calendar so that it's not a month to month?
Yep.
But if we can maybe schedule next meeting, and then even before the next meeting, maybe come up with a future schedule. So I can help facilitate that.
So I am fine July 7th. I just wanted to point out a lot of people might be away, so I don't know.
I'm away July 7th.
Yeah, I think most people will be.
And then I'm out that first week in August and probably first week in September. It's going to be nightmarish. So,
What about that second week in July? It seems like a middle of the.
I
14th?
leave that Wednesday for a 5-day conference, but I'm available Monday and Tuesday of that week.
Oh wait,
You and I
that,
are
I'm
at
out
I was gonna
conference.
say I just realized that's
We're
the
at a
first day.
conference.
Yeah, that's the first day of our conference.
I could do the week of the 19th. At some point. Matt, are you? Any
I'm
of those
out
days?
that week.
You're-
I'm
you're
out
here
that
on the
week.
23rd.
Well, you
Right.
can zoom in.
You said you are available the 21st or no? You have the
I'm
week.
not. I'm out. I have 18th to the 23rd.
What about the last week of June and then skip a July meeting?
I could do the 30th.
It works.
I could do the 30th.
Would June 30th work for people?
Yeah.
That works?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no.
Does any
I
day
said
that week
starts
work?
the 4th.
No, we leave the 25th.
Oh.
Going out west, doing Yellowstone and
Nice.
Oh, nice.
That's
That's
fun.
awesome.
yeah.
I can go visit my brother.
Uh,
Not on Yellowstone.
Well, do we want to just pick a date? We're not going to get a consensus, I
Yeah.
don't think. At some point,
Yeah, and people. Some
Seems like
someone
more
can-
might be good for the 30th. It's just you,
June
Carrie.
30th seems to work better.
That's
You
not
okay with
good
that,
for.
Carrie?
That's
Yeah.
not necessarily good for me.
Okay.
But
okay. Well,
Is
when
the
do you-
29th? Would Tuesday be better on that week?
I could do the. Yeah, I get. Yeah.
I just don't know if that's a selectmen's meeting.
Mm.
Oh, no, that's June 29th? No,
Yep.
no, should be all set. Okay.
Do we have a June 29th? All
I can-
thumbs up?
I can
Do
move
it
some stuff around and make the
this week.
29th work.
Are
I
we
could-
going? Are we going for the same 5:30, 7:30 time frame?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
That works
that's
for me.
still-
Yeah, work
I
for
could.
everybody else?
I could do the. I could do the 30th if that's better. I'll switch stuff.
No.
Yeah.
The 29th works for everybody?
Both days
Wait,
work.
I can work do either.
But we don't know if it's a. You were saying we.
No,
don't
it shouldn't be.
Oh, it's
Shouldn't
not.
be.
29th going once.
Works for me.
Okay.
5:30 to 7:30?
Sold.
Got it.
Sold.
Capital planning meeting.
And we'll wait for future ones depending on like kind of the schedule that we come up with.
Mhm.
Workload. Timeline.
Because I can't say that the 30th doesn't work because I haven't requested that from you yet, Jason.
Yo, you get
You know
denied
what?
now, Matt.
Denied.
We can take it, because I just moved my day.
But that's why I was saying I
It's all
could
good.
change the 30th request because I knew you were moving your day.
I'm happy to do it. Anything to accommodate the group. 29th is perfect. No worries. No worries.
Anything else?
This
Motion
is really
to-
helpful, yeah.
Yes, good night.
Assign
Very
homework.
productive. Very productive meeting.
Yeah, do we need to assign it?
She's
Yeah.
going, Liz.
I'm not
No,
going
I
to
said- I
assign
said
it, but
assign
I'm going
homework
to
when I
let
fix
Jason
my
assign
mouse.
I
it.
thought you were saying nodded.
Yeah, I think I'll
Thumb on a
review
table, I'm
my
older.
notes. I have my notes. I know Jason has his notes.
Yep.
Greg has his. Jason and I will kind of review all of the notes and then I'll reach
But if
out.
we're
with
so
any
if we're
kind of
looking at next
assignments.
meeting being to start to go through some of this, it would almost be helpful for everyone to have some of those notes on, whether it's demographics or building offerings or pick a topic that we're going to use for next meeting, and everybody spend some time to actually put some of those thoughts together, so it's not. Well, I don't know what the demographics of this town look like. I haven't looked around
Right.
town in a month.
Yeah.
Right.
That I think that's going to make these meetings a little more productive.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. If you take my outline for tonight, what I'll do is I'll send my outline with my notes to everybody, to Matt and Jason, and then I'll take out all my notes and it'll just be the outline. Then you can just take it in chunks and just run right through them.
To that point, one of my concerns was there's the demographics and there's a little bit of information that we can dig up, so to speak. But then there's having a demographics study done,
Right.
and which information is, or do we think that it's more valuable to have a study done
Yep.
for the demographics.
You're going to win a much better fight with MSBA if you have your demographics in hand before you get there.
How long do those studies take to complete?
I say hit or miss 4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, they're fairly quick. I can get you a rough price from a planner that we work with that does a lot of demographic work. Actually, you know what? I'll get you 2 prices from 2 different demographers we work with.
Okay. I think our association offers. There's one of them that offers.
Who you with, NASDAQ?
NASDAQ.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you have NASDAQ, then work with Art Wagner, who's a retired school superintendent up on the Cape, who has been specializing in demographics, and then SLR Group, which used to be Malone and McBroom, is based down in Canada, in Canada, based in Connecticut.
That's a long way to go.
Well, you know, but they're I can get you at least rough order of magnitude prices for the 2 of them. Then they do a more in-depth enrollment analysis than NASDAQ does, and they are willing to fight their conclusions pretty thoroughly with MSBI. So
That would probably be better. We've used NASDAQ before,
Yeah.
so I've seen the reports that we get
It's not
from them.
tremendous.
It would be great if we could do something at a deeper
yeah.
level.
I'll talk to the 2 of them tomorrow and get you just a rough order of magnitude of what it might cost.
I'll follow up
Thank
with
you,
you, and I'll reach out to them directly, and also if you.
Yeah, I can just make the introduction for you with a
Sounds
quick
great.
email, and you can go from there.
That's good.
So is it still our homework?
Well, no, if demographics is done, the next one's grade configuration. So
Yeah,
does
I
that-
think-
but does everybody take one night and spend 5 notes on grade configuration and see what everyone thinks, and then we can just go around the room next time like, oh, I think Millville School should go away. I think the complex should go away. I think our configuration should be more like this.
Right.
If we went around the room with that, we could see how much of a consensus we all have.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
earlier,
Yeah, that way it's
To do that discussion together, you're saying?
yeah. So everybody takes
But bring your
some time
notes.
between now and the
Yeah,
30th and
thoughts.
jots down notes on grade configuration,
Make some
and then
ideas.
just go around the room and just your thoughts, and everyone gets and see how many of us are on the same page. Does everyone think that this building needs to go away or stay, or this building gets turned into a high school or into a if everyone takes an hour over the next 3 weeks and jots down a few notes on that, I think it would help us at least take the weight in the room ourselves and at least see where we all stand.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
I think that's a good central
It'd be more
office.
productive. And Carrie, obviously, if you're not going to be here, if you want to send that, if you have thoughts, I'm sure Sarah's a chair, but I'm willing if you send them to me, I'll share your thoughts too.
I have
We found our communicator.
deputized you.
She had my vote from the start. I already knew.
Kara is awesome at capturing the
Absolutely.
essence of what we're trying to do.
I like to be organized. Like I want these dates for the whole year.
We'll get there. Hopefully, very quickly. So.
I'm not too worried.
Yeah.
A little
Okay.
bit. Not
All right.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks, everybody. This
everyone.
was awesome.
Yeah.